The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Dylan Mangan of the Southern Star and I'm joined by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy as always. Before we get into things, I'd just like to give our listeners a gentle reminder to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose credit union, choose local, choose community. Now today we're going to take a look back on the season that was for John Cleary and the Cork senior men's football team. It wasn't quite to be on Sunday in Croke Park as the Rebels bowed out of the championship with a 1-12-1-8 defeat against Derry. We're going to chat about that game along with the season as a whole later on with Matthew Hurley, and we'll also hand out some very unofficial Southern Star Cork football awards based on the performances this year. But first, let's turn our attention to two big wins for Cork intercounty teams at the weekend, as both the camogie and ladies football teams advanced into their respective quarterfinals with convincing wins. Kieran, we might chat about the camogie in a second, but first, Ahamilla might be turning into a bit of a good luck charm for the ladies football team as they blew Tip away in Clonakilty on Saturday.
It certainly seems like that. Can we play there every week? I'm sure that was a chant that was coming up out of the stand in Ahamilla last Saturday when Cork hammered Tipperary. It was 8-12 to 2-3. So that win was enough for Cork to go through to the quarterfinals of the All-Ireland series, and Cork on our way to Armagh on Saturday week. So that's a long trip up north, but Cork will travel with a pep in their step after a really convincing win against Tipperary. Anna Ryan got 2 goals, Derek Kiley got a goal, Hannah Looney had 4 points. There was goals for Maura O'Callaghan, Emer Kiley, Breeda O'Sullivan, Orla Cahalan even got a goal, and that's the same Orla Cahalan it was feared she'd be out of action for a couple of weeks after she suffered a hairline fracture of her metatarsal. But we know, Dylan, I suppose with Beckham and Rooney all those years ago, that metatarsals are weird creatures in their own right, but it was great to see Orla back. But this was a huge win for the Cork footballers and sends them through to the knockout stages. And like we said, 2 games Cork have now played in Clonakilty in the last couple of months, and it's 2 wins. So I don't think it'll be too long before we see the Cork footballers back in West Cork again.
Maybe they should just play there all the time, like we said. Just a permanent fixture there. Why not? The camogie team also had a comfortable win against Clare at the weekend. That sets up a mouth-watering quarter-final against Kilkenny this Sunday in Croke Park. It's a repeat of last season's final as well, so that should be a great game as well, Kieran.
Yeah, huge game for the Cork camogie team. So they did the needful as well last weekend, did a resounding win away to Clare. They put up 3-19, really strong second half. Amy O'Connor got a goal in the second half. I think Fiona Keating scored a goal in the first half. And so it was a really good Cork performance when they needed it. So they're through now to a quarterfinal against Kilkenny. So this will be the curtain raiser to the All-Ireland Senior Men's Hurling semi-final on Sunday in Croke Park. So there will be a big crowd there. And the fact that Kilkenny are playing in both the camogie and the hurling, there will be a huge Kilkenny support there. And Kilkenny are the reigning champions who beat Cork in last year's final. So when you start to put it all together, it looks like the odds are slightly stacked against Cork on Sunday. But we have an interview with Matthew Toomey, the Cork manager in Thursday's Southern Star, and he's making the point that this is probably a good time to play Kilkenny because you're playing them early in the knockout stages. So the deeper you go into competition, theoretically, the better teams get. So maybe this is Cork's best chance of beating the the All-Ireland champions. It will be tough. We only have to look at Cork's record in big games over the last couple of years to know that the Rebels have come up short in the last 2 Division 1 league finals and the last 2 All-Ireland finals. But now Cork have this great chance just to put that record to one side, put it to bed, and really set them up for the business into the competition. But it's going to be hard. There's no getting away from it. It's going to be really tough. Cork have been free scoring in the last couple of games against Down and Clare. I think it's 319 they put up in both games. So that's one positive going in. Another positive is that Orla Cronin came on for the last 10 minutes against Clare, and she scored a point as well. So that will strengthen Cork's options. And also Aisling Thompson is back in the panel for this game, and Laura Hayes. Aisling hasn't played since last year. She did her cruise sheet last August. So she's been out of action for the complete inter-county season so far. So it's a big boost to have her back in and around the panel as well. So huge task for the Cork camogie team. But if they want to win in All-Ireland and bring your Duffy Cup back to Cork, you have to beat a team like Kilkenny. So the stage is set. And this game is on TV on Sunday, and it's a 1/2 throw-in.
I'm going to add another positive in there as well, that both teams managed to get great victories despite the fixture clashes that we've spoken about in recent weeks. And there is no fixture clash this weekend or next weekend for either the quarterfinals. So that surely is another positive there as well.
100%. We're from here now through to the finals. The football and camogie are an alternate weekend, so we will not have any more fixture clashes, which is a great relief, because over the last couple of weeks, for the players especially, but for the squads and the managements, this was a huge distraction, because it was all the media was talking about, because we were trying to shine a spotlight on what was going on in the hope that it won't happen anymore. But it's almost Groundhog Day, because we've been here before so often in the past. But the good news is that there is no more dual clashes from here to the end of the season. And the hope is that both Cork teams will go all the way this year, starting with the Cork camogie team. And like I said, Dylan, Orla Cahalane is back in action. It was a surprise that she's back so quickly, but good news for both the camogie team and the footballers. So the camogie now have access to the 4 dual players on Sunday. So that's Orla Cahalane, Aoife Healy, Libby Coppinger and Hannah Looney. And then they'll switch back to football for the following week against Armagh. So hopefully there's a couple more weeks left in the season for both camps.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say as well, last week on the podcast, we spoke about how it would be nice for some of the male players to come out in support of the dual players, not only the dual players, but like ladies GAA in general. And just after we recorded later that week and earlier this week, the GPA released an open letter from the 6 GAA captains of the male senior intercounty teams expressing support for the stance that they have taken, calling for implementation of the agreed charter that will hopefully improve their lot in terms of expenses and welfare and the administration of their games in general. So that's a positive move there as well.
100%. And it was great to see that statement come out earlier this week. It's just the backing, like we said last week, Dylan, just the backing that the female players, the camogie players and the ladies footballers needed, that the men have their backs basically, and that they're supporting them, and that they want the same. So it's put the ball back in the court of the powers that be. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens from here. But even looking in Clonakilty last weekend, before the game started, the Cork Tip game, the Cork players, we have a photo on Thursday Star of in their white t-shirts with hashtag United for Equality written across it, and the photo's in Thursday Star, and it's quite a strong photo, because you see the whole Cork panel there together, and you know what they're fighting for, and they want equality. In one sense, Cork have it better than a lot of other counties, because let's say the ladies footballers, for example, Shane Ronayne was telling me that they have access to nutritionists, and they have access to a really good medical team, and they have access to park equipment, parky ring when they want it, and they can train at certain venues. But that's not replicated in a lot of other counties. Cork and maybe some of the elite are the exception to the rule. But it's great to see that they've all come together here, from junior, intermediate, senior in ladies football and camogie, just to kind of highlight what's going on. So hopefully something will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll move on to athletics now. The season is hotting up, and in recent years we've obviously been spoilt in West Cork for brilliant athletes. Obviously there's Paul O'Donovan, Fintan McCarthy, Phil Healy, to name just a few, but there is another crop on the way up who have just put in some brilliant performances at the National Juvenile Track and Field Championships, which were on over the weekend. Who are some of the names we need to watch out for, and who put in some great performances?
So that's the good news. It's a good news for fans of West Cork sport that the conveyor belt across all sports is particularly strong, and especially in athletics. So we had a couple of gold medal winners last weekend. Nicola Tuttle, and we mentioned her a couple of times on this podcast before. She's the 19-year-old from Kilbrittain. She is an extraordinary hammer thrower. Like when she was 16 years old, Dylan, she won the Irish Senior Women's Hammer title. She's just an incredible talent, and she's had a great year so far. She's thrown four PBs, and she's second in the all-time Irish list, and she's also the Irish under-23 record holder in the women's hammer. And at the Nationals the weekend, this is her first year up at the under-23 level, and it was no surprise that she won as well, and she won by some distance. I think it was 18 metres separating her and her next opponent, so I think that just highlights the quality that Nicola has. So that was gold for Nicola, and I was chatting to her on Monday. Already that's her 8th Irish national gold medal from under 16 up to, what is she now? She's 19. Like, that's just incredible that she has that collection already. So that was gold for Nicola Tuttle, who started off with Bandon Athletic Club. Another Bandon athlete is Lauren McCourt, who won gold in the women's 400 metres at under 23 level. And it's Lauren's first year up at under 23 as well. So to win gold was a big step forward for her. She had a couple of injury issues this year, but she's in good form of late, and she set a PB recently too. And as well as that, going down to the junior, which is under 20, Maeve O'Neill won the women's 800 metre for the 3rd year in a row. So that's an incredible dominance from Maeve O'Neill, and she's a young teenager from Ballinaccarriga who just set her leaving cert, and she races out of Downey's Athletic Club. So there were 3 local athletes who won gold medals up in Tullamore. And also, just to mention as well, a young teenager from Cora, Katie Kingston, who's only 15 or 16, I think it's 16. She won silver in the under 20 women's javelin, with a PB there as well. And like the fact she's only 16 and she's medaling at under 20 level, it just bodes well for the future. So yeah, the future is bright for Irish athletics. And just for our listeners to note as well, that both Nicola Tuttle and Jane Buckley, who won a bronze medal last weekend, have been selected on the Irish team for the European Under-23 Championships that are on in Finland from July 13th to 16th. So we've another 2 West Cork athletes flying the West Cork flag on the international stage.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And Jane Buckley there, of course, had a brilliant year in America as well. So good news all around. And some more good news from this week was that our latest Celtic Ross Hotel West Cork Sports Star monthly award winner was crowned, and it was Munster and Irish rugby star Jack Crowley, who's honoured for being the first West Cork man to play an active role in Ireland's Grand Slam win. And Kieran, it's a well-deserved a well-deserved award for the Inishannon man, but also a well-deserved man for the award.
It's exactly. I couldn't say it any better myself, Dylan. So this is a lovely evening in the Celtic Ross on Monday. So Jack was just out of Ireland camp. He was in there the last 2 weeks. So he's part of the training camp ahead of the World Cup, that big kind of training group that Andy Farrell named. And Jack's target is to be in that squad on that plane that's going to France in a couple of months' time for the Rugby World Cup. So he was joined by his family, his immediate family and friends at the Celtic Ross. It was a really nice presentation. And when I was saying a couple of words about Jack, I just made note that the West Cork Sports Star Awards, they really have their fingers on the pulse of what's happening in West Cork, and they have had for the last 26 years. This was our 4th rugby presentation this year alone. And that's incredible, Dylan, because it just highlights again the boom that we're experiencing here in West Cork. Already in the senior side, we honoured John Hodnett from Oscarbery. He's the man of the match in the URC final. And I suppose his interview after went viral as well for his slip of the tongue, but he's doing incredible things for Munster. And there was even a strong argument that he should have been in Andy Farrell's training panel. And as well as that, we 2 Youth Quarterly Award winners, which are Dylan Hicks from Bantry and also Saskia Wycherley from Bantry Rugby Club. And both of those players have already captained their province at under 18 level. Saskia has captained her country at under 18 level. And Dylan Hicks is just going straight out of secondary school, and he's going into his first year in the Munster Rugby Academy in a couple of weeks' time. So just highlights again just how strong rugby is in the region right now. And then you have someone like Jack Crowley, and he is the heir apparent to Johnny Sexton. Like, the sky is the limit for this fella. He's came through the ranks of Bandon Rugby Club and Bandon Grammar, and he's just so much potential, and he's realising that potential. Like, just think back to the URC final against Leinster, the final moments, and that drop goal he scored. You know, that was incredible for a young man like that to have the wherewithal, the confidence, the class, the skill, the clarity in that moment, just to pull that off. Like, it kind of spoke volumes to where he's at now. And he's had an incredible last 12 to 18 months where he's just been on this upward trajectory, and he's getting better and better and better. And that's great news for Munster Rugby. It's great news for Irish Rugby, but it's incredible news for West Cork Rugby, because it's one of our own who's doing it at that level. And for young boys and girls right across West Cork to see someone like Jack Crowley do what he's doing, it just makes it so real.
Yeah, something interesting for our listeners to keep an eye out on as well in relation to Jack Crowley is Johnny Sexton has a disciplinary hearing coming up. I can't remember the date just off the top of my head right now, for his role in an altercation with the referee at the halftime of Leinster's Champions Cup final against La Rochelle. Now, if he's found guilty, he might get a 2 or 3 game ban, which means he might miss some of the World Cup, those first couple of games. So it could be a situation where Jack Crowley is asked to step in to fill his boots for those 2 games, which obviously would be huge news for him as well.
It would, yeah. And what strikes you about Jack is that he's just so unflustered. He's just not fazed by it all. And that came across too on Monday night. He's just so cool and calm. He is off the pitch like he's on the pitch. And talking to his banding coaches over the years, they always made reference to the fact that he has this strong inner confidence. He's just so confident in himself and his own ability, and you need that at the highest level. And we've seen that with his performances with Munster and his couple of caps with Ireland. Just think back to the Autumn International Series. He started against Australia, and kind of straight in there just after making his debut the week before, and it just didn't fluster him. So that's a great sign for what is to come. And the thing with Jack is, whatever happens with Sexton, whether he gets a ban or not, we know he's stepping aside after the World Cup. So that jersey is there for whoever post World Cup, whether it's Ross Byrne or it's Jack Crowley or whoever. But he's very much in that conversation. He's really in that conversation, and I think that's why it's just such great news for West Cork Rugby and West Cork sport in general, that here we are producing a sports person of that ilk, of that stature, who could potentially, touch wood, be a key player for Ireland for the next decade or so.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all Team Jack here at the Southern Star. Anyway, we're going to take a very quick break now, and we'll be back to chat about Cork's loss to Derry, but the season in general as well.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Now, welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. We'll be joined by Matthew Hurley in just a moment to chat about Cork's season and to review their performances throughout the year. But it wasn't quite to be for Cork in Croke Park on Sunday, as they lost out to a stubborn Derry side. Manager John Cleary spoke to the media after the game and expressed his disappointment at the result. We're going to play a quick clip here now to see what he thought of the game.
Look, initially we're disappointed, gutted, really. You know what I mean? I suppose a strange start of the game, really, in that we had a lot of possession. First 10, 15 minutes maybe didn't make it count. They were very defensive. We couldn't break them down. They turned us over. And then before halftime, maybe similar to last week, got a couple of points, and we felt going in at halftime. Look, again, we haven't played outstandingly well, and only a point down. Then after halftime, we had 2 chances at points, and we didn't get them, and we went in for a goal and missed it, got overturned, and went down, and they just picked us off. And looked like it was going to be a long day for us then. And then the goal gave us a lifeline. and maybe a bit out of the blue. And next thing we gave away the goal back again, which was a killer. And I think after that we tried hard valiantly, but look, I think Derry probably had our measure there, and probably 4 points. They missed a penalty, but they were able to suck it up then. And I suppose, look, we threw caution a bit to the wind there in the end, and we told lads, look, power forward there. And look, I did think we were a bit flat today. Just a warm day out there, big pitch. Maybe the last 2 weeks, maybe our big players around the middle weren't as energetic and as lively as they were the last couple of weeks. And I think but overall, look, I think we just beaten by a better team on the day, and were more efficient than we were.
And we're joined now by Star Sports reporter Matthew Hurley, also known as GAA Statsman on Twitter. And Matthew, I'll come to you in a second, but first, Kieran, we heard John Cleary there talking about Cork's performance against Derry, saying it was a bit of a strange game where maybe the last couple of big performances just caught up with them. How did you see the game?
It was certainly a strange game. I was just thinking from the perspective of a neutral, if they just tuned in to see how the game unfolded. Because if you don't know too much about Derry, they're such a defensively set up team, and they dropped everyone behind the ball. And sometimes when they attacked then, Cork did the same. So you had stretches of the game where there was nobody in one half of the field, which was quite unusual. So it was a strange game. I've seen some people describe it as a bore fest, others dour. And you probably couldn't argue with that, but you can't argue too that Derry were worth the win. Derry were the better team on the day, and you just always felt that Derry had that extra bit of class, that they could get the scores that bit easier, that they could go up the gears that bit easier if they needed to. And we saw that when they hit back with their goal less than 1 minute after Rory Maguire scored a goal for Cork that had looked to breathe life into the Rebels challenge. But for those 54 seconds, Rebel fans could dare to dream that the comeback was on, because Cork had closed up to within one. But soon that gap was out to 5 points. And that was really it in terms of the game. John Cleary was telling us after that he felt that Cork were flat, like he said there, and that some of the big guns weren't as energetic around the middle of the field. And it's worth noting this was Cork's third big game in a row. You did the game against Mayo, then the game against Roscommon, and straight into a huge game against Derry, whereas Derry had the weekend off the previous week. So we were unsure coming in, is it better to have momentum or is it better to rest? And I think we can see the way the quarterfinals panned out, you're almost better to have that rest, just to get the bodies right again, because Cork weren't as energetic as they were. And you could see the players who came off. Brian O'Driscoll, man of the match against Roscommon, he was subbed off. Rory Dean came off. Sean Powter came off. The so-called bigger players and those leaders of the team, they just weren't having that impact they wanted, and they were brought off. But they're after a couple of big games in a row. So I think it probably caught up with Cork a small bit in the legs. But Derry just had that bit extra. But then again, they're further along their development than this Cork team. So no shame in losing to the Ulster champions by 4 points.
Yeah, Matthew, can Cork take some kind of solace from the fact that if they had brought their shooting boots, we might be here talking about a potential semi-final?
That was potentially it, Dylan, to be honest with you. Like, the 37% shots go over the bar or in the net, in the case of Rory Maguire. Ultimately, this level, it's not good enough, really, for Cork. But they are a developing team. They're Division 2. They were the only Division 2 team that weren't promoted or relegated or in Division 1 outright. So there's something to take out of that, in fairness, that they were very close to Derry. They had only one shot less than Derry in the whole game. And I just thought Derry's, their tackling was better as well in stages of the game. Like, Derry conceded only 1 free inside their 45. You could see they were just more experienced than Cork, and Cork need to learn from this. But at the same time, it's a brilliant experience for these Cork players. Like, you look at the other counties in the quarterfinals at the weekend. Like, in fairness, Cork put up a fight. Like, you look at Mayo and Tyrone, didn't really put up a fight. So John Cleary has to take that out of the game as well. It's no shame, as Kieran said, in losing to Derry. They're 2 times Ulster champions in a row. They're more conditioned than us. They reached an All-Ireland semi-final last season. They tested Galway all the way, and they will do so against Kerry in the semi-final as well. So Cork could take no shame out of it. I think there was a very good performance, very good year. And as well as that, like, the maximum that Cork lost to this year in all competitions was 4 points to beat it to Derry. And that's a huge positive for Cork going forward. Like, in the past few years, Cork would take maybe 1 or 2 beatings, big beatings now. But now in the last few games, they're competitive in every game. They belong in the quarterfinals at the weekend. I think John Cleary's done a superb job, and as well, Kevin Walsh, who's come into the backroom team, has done a superb job with the defence. And Cork have had a good year, and it's no shame in losing to Derry at the weekend.
Yeah, and in terms of like staying in games, like you mentioned there, like Cork against Roscommon scored that kind of flurry of points before halftime to bring back a game that looked like it was running away. Same against Derry as well. So Kieran, is that something that can be taken into next season? I know we're kind of talking about this season now, but just briefly, would that be something that John Cleary can take a positive from the season just gone?
I think a huge positive that John could take is the progression that Cork made from 2022 up to 2023. Like Matthew was saying there, to not lose by more than 4 points in a game. Just think back to last year when Cork lost by, I think it was 12 points to Kerry in the Munster semi-final, lost by 11 to Dublin in the All-Ireland quarter-final. But fast forward on 12 months and Cork are competitive in all their games. Look at their 5 games in the All-Ireland Championship. Cork beat a Louth team that had beaten Cork in the league earlier in the year. Cork ran Kerry, All-Ireland champions, to 2 points in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and Cork had regrets about that game. They could have won that game. Cork then went and beat Mayo, a Division 1 team and reigning Division 1 league champions in Limerick, and Cork reeled off the last 1-6 in that game, so that showed character and resilience. Then Cork beat another Division 1 team, Roscommon, the following weekend, and then they came up against the back-to-back Ulster champions and lost by 4 points. So when you put those 5 performances together, there's a strong body of evidence to show the progress that Cork have made from last year to this year. And if that's what John Cleary and Kevin Walsh and the management team could do in the space of 12 months, like it does make you optimistic for what they can do going into next year, because the building blocks are in place now. The Cork footballers look physically stronger. They're better conditioning. John Cleary's made a note of that. They can last full 70-minute games now. And when you think, okay, that sounds a prerequisite for inter-county footballers to last a full game, go back to last year, the Cork footballers couldn't do it. They faded against Kerry and they faded against Dublin, whereas now this year they're going right to the end of games. There's definite areas for improvement, and we'll probably get to those at some stage in terms of, like Matthew mentioned there, in terms of shooting and taking their chances. But we've seen so much progress this year, it would leave you very optimistic for what's to come, because we've seen this Cork team improve, but we know that there's room for more improvement as well. So I think Cork fans can be very optimistic going into 2024, but they can also be very happy with the progress that the team has made this year. And just one final point on that, what I like, lads, is the fact that almost that connection between the supporters and the football team has come back. It really has come back. And I think that's quite important as well, that the footballers can now feel that they have that support, because for a long time there, they just didn't. We went at league games there, and it's the hardcore fans that are there, and the support has been paltry. But we've seen now in the last couple of games, there's more support getting behind the footballers. And that shows too that this Cork football team is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, just on that point, Matthew, like the Roscommon game, especially, the crowd were really, really up for that, and really got involved. Obviously, the fact Cork came back to win it helps, you know. But will the players take confidence from having that kind of support behind them?
I think most of the players live off the support. When you look at the likes of Sean Powter living off it, Rory Maguire loved celebrating in front of the fans now in Croke Park the last day. I just think the players live off it, in fairness, and it's great to see, in fairness. Like, you look at the hurling, a lot of support goes to the games, and like, I know the hurlers went out, and the hurling fans would not want me to say this, but I think the hurlers going out against Limerick actually kind of helped the footballers, because it made the fans come out and support the football team. And watching their game against Roscommon, which was a brilliant performance from them, made them go up to the Derry game, in fairness. And there was a handful of Cork supporters, in fairness, around the Nally, around the hill, around the Cusack stand. Like, there was a load of Cork fans, in fairness. I know there was mostly Dublin and Mayo, but there wouldn't have been many Cork supporters over the past few seasons. Like, I remember the game against Dublin last year when the players were in a huddle. Like, there was only, I don't know, nearly 100 Cork fans there, and in 83,000 capacity stadium. So, you know, it's a big change in the fans this season, and they are getting behind the team in general, and they've lots to look forward to when you look at the under-20 success in 2019, the game against Roscommon, the fact we only lost by 4 points this season. There's a lot of positives to take for the Cork footballers this season, and to take another step as well. And I think Holly O'Sullivan mentioned this before on the podcast or the paper or whatever. Cork need to get out of Division 2. They need to get to Division 1 to progress even further, to get the fans more optimistic. And that's the thing with Cork football at the moment. It looks realistic. Like, you look at the Division 2 teams in the next season, like, okay, Armagh are decent enough side, but you look at Donegal, Kildare, Meath. To be fair, if Cork are going to progress even further, they need to be beating those sides, and especially the likes of Cavan and Fermanagh. So they can definitely fancy their chances to go up to Division 1 next season. And yeah, Division 1 football for the first time since 2016 looks very, very close at the moment, and the fans will get behind the team if they do that.
You think that's a must, Kieran?
Oh, 100%. I think Cork need to get up to Division 1, because what we've seen in the last couple of games is you need to be in that high pressure environment against quality teams. And with the greatest respect to some of the teams in Division 2, they're obviously not at the levels of the Kerrys and the Mayos and the Galways, and you've Dublin and Derry back up in Division 1 next year. So if you want to be able to be at a level to beat these teams, you need to be playing against them regularly, and that's what the league affords. If you think there that Cork have been out of Division 1 since 2016, we even spent one season down in Division 3 after being relegated in 2019. Like, for a football county like Cork to be slumming it out in Division 3 and bounce back at the first time of asking, won all games in Division 3 that year, but it just isn't good enough. That's not next to the level that the Cork footballers need to be at. So they need to get back up to Division 1. It is very attainable. Like Matthew said there, look who Cork have next year: Armagh, Cavan, Donegal, Fermanagh, Kildare, Louth and Meath. And you wouldn't be scared of any of those teams, given what we've seen of Cork this year, and if Cork can step it on again. So with 2 teams to go up, there is a chance for Cork to definitely be in that promotion conversation next year. I suppose it depends how kind of fixture makers are to Cork, and if they can get 4 home games and not too many trips up the north. But even at that, you would be thinking right now, okay, Cork will put themselves in the mix for promotion. And John Cleary said as much after the game against Derry on Sunday, that getting back to Division 1 is where this Cork team needs to be, because that's the environment that these players need to be in to just improve themselves. Because what we've seen in games is that the Cork footballers are making mistakes at the big moments of big games. And I'm thinking back to, again, against Derry the last day, Sherlock had a wide after 3 minutes after Cork kept possession. You need to take a chance like that. Cillian O'Hanlon had 2 wides towards the end of the first half. You need to be putting those over. Look at Brendan Rodgers for Derry in the second half. He picked off 2 fine points. Brian O'Driscoll got through in the second half, under pressure, but he snapped it, he shot and dragged it wide. Again, you need to be taking something from that. Matty Taylor, straight off the throw-in for the second half, got through. He could have tapped over for the equalising point, tried to play in Colin O'Callaghan, came to nothing. But it's all these decision-making, shot selection, and at the pressure moments of big games, Cork need to improve on that, and they'll improve on that by playing against the bigger teams on a more regular basis. And that's why get up to Division 1 is so important.
And Matthew, where else do you think Cork need to improve? Like, we've spoken a lot on the podcast about how much their fitness has come on, and they're defensively a lot, like their defensive structure is a lot better than it was previously. Do you think the next step now is, like Kieran said, kind of going forward, being able to develop attacks a little bit better and create scoring chances more regularly?
I think that's a very good point that Kieran makes, because you look at all the teams at the quarterfinal this weekend. Like, I don't think any team had lower than 37% shot accuracy, which tells you all you need to know. And Cork need to improve in that department. And as well as that, I know Cork have improved defensively, but even in the game against Derry, you look at Derry conceded 1 free inside the 45. Cork conceded a load of frees. Like, Shane McGuigan scored 4 frees on Sunday. So there's still a lot to be improving there. And like, Cork weren't smart enough at the time. Well, they were smart against Roscommon and Mayo, but as the third was got kicked in, they didn't get smart enough against Derry, whereas Derry were kind of experienced in this kind of defensive system. That's what Cork need to improve on in the next few years as well. And the fitness, I think, is massively improved from last season. You look at the way they go on for 70 minutes, it's incredible throughout throughout the season. And building a squad, I don't think there is much in that. Like, you look at the injury players to come back next season. You look at Sean Meehan, Colin Manny, Damien Gore might come back into the team. There's still some players from the club championships, I'm sure, will put their hands up to John Cleary. So I don't think there's an issue in that. Maybe the shooting is the big thing, and maybe being smart at the defensive play as well. I think that's the two things that Cork need to focus on. And as well as that, another positive, the kickouts this year I thought were massively improved this season. Micheál Martin was getting better as the year had gone on with his kickouts. And you look at Colm O'Callaghan, Ian Maguire, Rory Dean, Cillian O'Hanlon in the midfield, they were hoovering up everything. And you look at the midfield as well as they played in this championship, they've done excellent. In fairness, they came up against two twin towers in Brendan Rodgers and Conor Glass on Sunday. They learned from that. They learned from the experience of playing against them. But ultimately, I think it's been a very good year for Cork. But shooting needs to be on the priorities, Kieran said there.
Is there anything aside from shooting, Kieran? If there was one thing on your wish list for next year for Cork to improve, what would it be?
On my wish list, no injuries, please. I know that's every county suffers some injuries, but you look at some of the players that Cork lost this year, and we're talking about the attack. And only one starting forward scored from play against Derry. That was Rory Dean. So that's kind of a telling stat as well when we're talking about improving that attacking output when it comes to the big moments at big games against the big teams. So look at Brian Hurley the last couple of games. He was injured against Mayo, missed the Roscommon game, came on for the last 15 minutes the last day, but he just didn't look at it. And how could he? He'd suffered a hamstring injury just a couple of weeks beforehand, and Brian has been a talismanic figure for the Cork footballers for the last I don't know how many years, and he's a key man in that attack. Cathal O'Mahony has missed a huge chunk of, nearly all inter-county season. He suffered an injury in action for UCC in the Sigerson Cup earlier in the year, and Cathal is a very talented forward that you'd love to see more of, and he has potential to hopefully, touch wood, kick on with the senior team. So you'd love to get for Cork to get all their attacking options there, and then to be able to pick, because you'll have Sherlock there, and you'll have Conor Corbett as well, who someone said to me last day, he's the Clyde at Clifford, and that's not trying to put too much pressure on the young fella, but he just has that kind of X factor around him. But what he needs too is an injury-free run and exposure to the senior games, especially through the league, and that will help him no end as well. And then if you look at it too, like Cork have been without Liam O'Donovan for the last 2 years, and he's the Clonakilty defender who made such an impact when he burst on the scene. He's a really, really special player, Liam. He's just been dogged with injuries. So it's just so unfortunate what's happened to him over the last couple of years. The good news is that he has been back in action for Clon in the last couple of weeks. So again, touch wood, fingers crossed, light a candle that he gets through the county championship and everything goes well for him. Because on and off the field, his teammates at both club and county will just tell you how influential he can be. That man is a born leader. So if he could see him maybe coming back in, then you have the likes of Sean Meehan, who's been injured as well. So Cork have had a couple of injuries and they've had to go into their panel. So if we can get that full cohort next year, that would be brilliant. So that's on my wish list today. That damn injury god, stay away from Cork next year and put your eye on someone else.
Finger maybe on to Kerry this next year, Kieran.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one, can I?
Absolutely, I guess you can. We'll move on now, and let's hand out some of our very unofficial Southern Star Cork GAA football awards, as I've anointed them today. We're going to start with a simple one for both the best player, and I'll come to you, Matthew, first. If you want to tell us your best player and why you chose him.
There's been a number of candidates, in fairness. I'll whittle down to three, in fairness. Rory Maguire, Ian Maguire and Matty Taylor. I think they've been influential this year for Cork. Because it's West Cork and because he got that goal in Croke Park, I'm going to go Rory Maguire. He's been absolutely incredible this year. 1-4 the last two games from full back. He's been immense, and he's been a changing player in this Cork team. Maybe he was a bit inexperienced last year, but he's definitely proved himself this season. And he's he's interacted with the fans as well. And the fans love him. He's a new hero around West Cork, around Castlehaven, around the whole Cork county. So my player of the year would be Rory Maguire, and I love the celebration as well. I love the glove on his hand as well. So he's definitely a character, and he's a brilliant player as well. So Rory Maguire is my player of the year.
Yeah, he's a bit of a talismanic figure. It was just so annoying that Derry scored so soon after that, because I think he was still celebrating when the the Derry goal went in, but I guess we'll forgive him for that. Kieran, who was your choice?
Like Matthew said, there's definitely a couple of contenders here. The likes of Matty Taylor's had a great year. Maguire's been very solid. But I go for Colm O'Callaghan. I think he's really come on leaps and bounds in that Cork midfield. He really found his feet this year. And I've been just really impressed with him in midfield. And there was days there when Ian Maguire wasn't as prevalent or as dominant in a game. And it was Colm O'Callaghan taking the game on. And his surge and runs, his power, his strength, his ability in the air. He just ticks so many boxes this year, and just really impressed by Colm O'Callaghan. So he gets my nod.
Sounds good. I didn't prepare a pick, but I was just thinking there while you were both speaking. I love Chris Oak-Jones. The impact he has off the bench every single time he comes on is incredible. So he's going to be my pick for this year. He could probably qualify as well for the next award we're going to hand out, which is the most improved player. Matthew, back to you again for this.
I'm going to go for a bit of an unusual one for this. I'm going to go Micheál Martin, the goalkeeper. I think his shot stopping was very, very good in previous years. There was no question about that. The question really with Micheál was his kicking out skills and his distribution and his penalty saving, to be honest, as well. Because I didn't think, with Shane McGuigan stepped up, I didn't think he'd save that penalty. But to be fair, Micheál did that, and his kickouts, like he was part of the kickouts against Kerry, which retained 100% of them. The kickouts, which was absolutely incredible. I think it was nearly 80% nearly every day he went out. And you wouldn't have said that about a Cork team in the past. And a lot of people were calling for Micheál Martin to be dropped because of the reason of the kickouts. But I think he proved to everyone he's definitely well able to kick out the ball. He's well able to find the midfielders. As Kieran mentioned, Colm O'Callaghan had an outstanding year, Ian Maguire. But mainly it was down to the kickouts, the restarts of Micheál Martin, and he'd be my most improved player. And I think he's a really, really important player for this Cork team moving forward.
Yeah, he's made some crucial saves in the big games as well, against Roscommon especially. Like he has really stepped up to the plate this year, so that's a good pick. And Kieran, for you?
Yeah, again, a couple of contenders there, but I'm actually going for Rory Maguire. I think he's really come on leaps and bounds. Like we said earlier, he's becoming almost this talismanic figure in the Cork defence. But just the step up he's had in the last couple of years, when he was probably brought up into the senior squad last year, maybe there was some surprise seeing him there, because he's almost an unknown quantity for those who don't watch the county championship. But he really has stepped up, and he's been so strong this year, not only defensively but offensively as well. Got his goal the last day, took it so well. But he's chipping in with points too. He got a couple of points against Roscommon the weekend before as well, and he's just kind of calm with the ball in his hands, whether he's in whether he's defending or he's on the attack, and he's just really impressed me, really caught the eye. So it's just another vote for. These are quickly becoming the Rory Maguire Award, so he's going to pop up in every category, I feel.
That's just, I guess, a mark of his performances this year. I want to give a shout out as well to Brian O'Driscoll. You wrote about him in the newspaper last week, Kieran, about he's come into the panel this year after being away, and his performances have been brilliant. He got that man of the match against Roscommon. I could keep bringing that game up, and I'll bring it up again as we move forward. But he's an honourable mention there as well. He's been brilliant this year. Now, next award is the moment of the season. Now, the way this one is working is want you to think about your favourite point, your favourite goal, your favourite save, block, tackle, or any other moment within a game that you just thought was outstanding from a specific player or the team in general. Matthew, what's your pick?
Bit of an unusual one here. Like Conor Corbett's goal is definitely up there against Roscommon, just the finish and the photo afterwards. I think George Hatchell took that photo. It was an incredible photo of him. Just putting the hands up in the air was an incredible moment. For me, though, I would say, and we mentioned it earlier in the podcast, the standing ovation given to the players after the Roscommon game. I have never experienced that as a Cork football fan ever. And it was an incredible moment, really. And it just shows that the Cork public would get behind this football team if they went up and they produced a very good win like that against the Division 1 side. And they did that. And the fans were just so reactionary to this performance. You could see the players interacting with the fans as well. I think Brian O'Driscoll and Rory Dean were a few of them, and Sherlock Powder during the game. It was just an intense atmosphere all game. It was a brilliant atmosphere, but Kevin O'Donovan got that point towards the end as well. So for me, it's the standing ovations that the players got against Roscommon. I think it just proved the Cork football might be on the way back, and the fans are definitely getting behind them.
Yeah, getting a nice shout out there for the fans as well for a mention. So that's nice, Matthew, as well. And Kieran, what was your favourite moment of the season gone by?
Great minds think alike, right? I'm going to prove it. I'd have written down here, but I had against Kerry, the fan reaction against Kerry, because it was the Cork fans are coming up smelling of roses in this podcast, but it was during that game. It was a tight game, and you could hear the chant of rebels rolling down off the stands, and it just stuck in my mind because it was the first time in a while I really felt, okay, the crowd is getting behind Cork and this football team has that support. And if people from other counties are listening to this podcast, they're saying, all right, lads, calm down, it's just the fans. But you got to put yourself in a Cork footballer's boots for a moment. For so long, the footballers have been the second class, and they're playing second fiddle to the hurlers, to put it that way. So for the Cork fans to get behind the footballers, it is a big moment, because there's been that mistrust between the footballers and the fans for so long, because the fans don't trust the footballers because they've been so inconsistent for the last decade. Every time we think they're going to go well, it proves to be a false dawn, and there's a hiding just waiting around the corner. But what the footballers have done in this championship is they have put threaded those back-to-back performances together. So now all of a sudden, when it comes to the Cork football team, almost a minimum you're thinking, okay, we're going to get a performance here. Whether it's good enough to beat one of the top teams, we'll have to wait and see if Cork can find an extra gear. But this team is producing performances, and that's all that the fans ask. And that's what we've seen throughout the championship. And that's why it just stuck in my mind, just at that day when the fans got behind. And like Matthew said there, against Roscommon and against Mayo up at the Gaelic grounds, the fans gave them a great reception afterwards. But even after the Cork team lost against Kerry, the fans were appreciative of the effort, because they knew, Jesus, this team is going somewhere, and they gave them that support. And it's almost reciprocated in that the players will feel that. So yeah, it's another award for the Cork fans.
We like handing out awards to ourselves. Is that it? My moment of the season, I'm going to go for a little bit of a strange one as well, is Brian Hurley's shot that hit the bar against Dublin in the league. If that went in, that would have been one of the best goals I've ever seen. And I think that I've said it before, but I'd say the bar is still rattling. It was such a good shot. And reminded me of Suarez had a shot for Liverpool against Arsenal. I think he'd already scored 4 in the game, or he'd scored a hat-trick from miles out, smashed it off the bar. It was one of those incredible moments. And it's one of those if-only moments, but we'll add it to the list anyway. And our last award for today is Performance of the Season. So fairly straightforward again. The best individual performance in a single game. Matthew, who's your pick?
There's been a lot of standout performances in the particular games. The trio I've written down here: Rory Maguire against Roscommon, scored 2 points for full back and was influential all game. Ian Maguire against Mayo, I thought he drove up the team in that game in the Gaelic grounds and got a well-needed win for Cork. And actually against Derry, I know we lost, but Tommy Walsh at full back, he was on Shane McGuigan all day. He kept them scoreless from playing. This is Shane McGuigan, who's the top scorer of the whole championship. So Tommy Walsh definitely deserves an honourable mention there. But overall, I'd have to go for Ian Maguire against Mayo. I thought he was influential going forward. Rory Maguire was excellent that day. Nearly the whole team was excellent, but I think everything went through Ian that day. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and he was driving the team up the field. He was defensively sound. And for me, I give it to the Barsman, Ian Maguire's performance against Mayo, and he got a nominee for Player of the Month as well, the PWC Player of the Month. So, and mainly down to that performance. So Ian Maguire against Mayo for me.
Great stuff. And Kieran, for you?
Yeah, a couple of big performances, especially in the latter stages of the championship. We saw Sherlock come off the bench and kick 1-5 against Mayo up in the Gaelic grounds, which was huge. He only came on in the 40th minute for Rory Dean, and look what he did. But I'm going to give a nod to Brian O'Driscoll against Roscommon. I thought it was immense. Strangely, he didn't get the man of the match that day, went to Matty Taylor, but Brian was nominated for the GAA Player of the Week. So go figure that out. I don't know how that works, but Brian was so good that game. And it's just, you saw the best of Brian O'Driscoll, his work rate, his energy, interceptions, the way he was able to retain the ball, recycle the ball. It's just been great to see Brian come back after his 4-year exile, hit the ground running, and become such a key part of this Cork team. So that just stands out for me. It was almost a game that announced Brian O'Driscoll, okay, he's back in a Cork jersey and he can do it, because we always knew Brian had the potential from his underage days. He was 4 years as a Cork under 21. He didn't make the best use of his talent in his first go as a Cork senior. He was dropped from the panel in 2018, but he's after coming back stronger and better than ever. And there's a great lesson there for everyone. And kind of kudos too for John Cleary, because John took a risk in bringing Brian back in, because some might have seen him as a liability. They're saying, why are you bringing him back in, given what had gone on before? But he proved himself this year, so Brian gets the nod for me.
There you go. We're running out of time, so we'll have to wrap up there very soon. But those are the we'll call them the first unofficial Southern Star Cork GAA Football Awards. We'll hopefully be back next season with some more of those. And we're going to take a quick break now. We'll come back and we'll have a look at what's in the paper this week. Matthew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Now, welcome back to the Star Sport podcast, and it's everybody's favourite time of the week, as now we take a quick look at what's coming up in this week's Southern Star Sport. So, Kieran, take it away.
Yeah, obviously the Cork footballers kind of take center stage. We've reaction and analysis from the defeat to Derry, but also looking to what Cork can learn from this season going forward. Looking at some of the local club action. Downey footballers won their first county senior title in a long time. They won the Division 3 league final against Knocknagree. So we have a report from that. And also the Plunkett's footballers beat Goleen and are through to the County Junior B final, and they're chasing a double here with the hurlers out in action this weekend. So you can read all about that here. Interview with Dylan Hicks too, the rising West Cork rugby star who picked up a West Cork Sports Star Quarterly Award last week. Also have a chat with Tony Stevenson, the Bantry kickboxer, who's hitting out at his exit at the European Games. He is not at all happy at what happened in his quarterfinal loss to his Hungarian opponent. So it's worth checking out. We have a follow-up to our interview with Don Hurley and Declan Deasy in last week's podcast, where they reveal what's the secret to Drina's success in recent years. Huge weekend for road bowlers this weekend. The first All-Ireland series is on in Ballincorrig, and we have a lot of West Cork bowlers in action there. And also just a quick mention for motorsport. Clonakilty driver Cal McCarthy had his first ever fastest stage the weekend just gone at the Ravens Rock Rally in Waterford. So you can check that out. And we also have a preview of the Cork and Kilkenny camogie semi-final, the Cork and Tipperary football game in Clonakilty reaction, and a match report from that. So it's packed again as usual, Dylan.
Packed as always. And inside sport for any cute pet fans, there'll be an 8-page supplement of over 260 of the entries to this year's West Cork's Cutest Pet, where we'll also be revealing the winner of that award. So check that one out. As always, that will be available in shops across West Cork from Thursday morning. And if you're further afield, can't make it to the shops, you can subscribe to the Southern Star and get it on your laptop, tablet, or phone. Just head to subscribe.southernstar.ie, enter your details, and you'll get an exact replica of the newspaper for less than €2 per week, along with full access to our website and all of our premium articles on there. As always, thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors at Access Credit Union. And if you've enjoyed this, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back again next week. Thanks for listening.